Mic check, 1, 2. Hello, everyone. Good evening. It is our Thursday night chat. Welcome to Fed PM Pro. This is the channel where we talk about federal program management and all the fun associated with a career in that. I am Jim OKeefe, your host. I've been in the federal program management space for over 20 years. And the purpose of this channel is really just to share, our experiences, my experiences, also for both of us, all of us to learn together. The idea being that, I'd like to share some of my experiences. I would also like it to be constructive and you to share some of your experiences. These will happen every Thursday. They can be in the form of an Ask Me Anything. I do encourage chat, so please, while you're watching, feel free to ask any questions. They can be on topic or otherwise. We'll see how we go and if I'm able to answer them in real time. If there is a specific topic that we're working on, we may go a couple of weeks around that topic. Tonight, we are going to be talking about ChatGPT again. This is the second one. So if you haven't seen the first episode of ChatGPT where we talk about the implications of it, that and all of the previous live streams are located on the Fed PM Pro channel. They're located in video form, so they're cut a little bit, so you can watch them there. Don't feel like you have to be here Thursday night to watch these things. And hopefully there's a lot of good information in these to help you as you're on your PM journey. And as I mentioned before, this channel is designed for the entire range of PMs. These are folks that are trying to decide if you want to go into this as a line of work. It'll help to give you some suggestions and tips on what you need to do to prepare yourself for this kind of career. It'll also help with those of us that have been PMs for a period of time. We're going to be talking about things like mental health challenges of PMs and a lot of different topics. And of course, love for you all to suggest any questions that you might have. I'm more than happy to go down a different rabbit hole to help you in your career planning and progress. So very excited about that. So thank you so much for joining. Again, we do this every Thursday at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So I'd love for you to stop by and join us as we continue this learning together. So today, we are going to be talking about ChatGPT and some of the new things that have occurred. This is happening in February of 2023. You almost have to say that now because things are happening so quickly. Again, if you're watching this in the future, things obviously may have changed, but as of right now, we're going to go through some of the interesting things that have happened with Microsoft Teams and also go through some of the interesting things that have happened with Bing lately. And also talk a little bit about some really cool prompts and ideas that I've been using on ChatGPT that might help you as well. So on these AMAs, there's just a couple of ground rules. Again, we want to be nice and helpful on this. Trolls will be ignored. I am keeping an eye on the chat, but as you know, bots can sometimes enter in. Please just ignore them, and I will try to block them as quickly as possible. Also, let's support each other. The goal of this is for us to encourage one another in this kind of journey. The PM job is a pretty unique one and challenging. It can be extremely rewarding, but it's important for all of us to kind of understand we're a lot of times dealing with very similar issues across the board, whether we're the program manager of a small program or a very large one. A lot of times the issues and challenges that you have can be very similar. So there are others out there that are running through the same thing as you are. And also there's a lot of folks out there that would like to help, and I'm one of them. So if I can help you on your journey in answering your questions, I'm happy to do that. My answers are based on personal experience only. This is not at all a sponsored video in any way, shape, or form. It has no reference to any past employer, agency, customers, anything. And my answers can be wildly different than yours. My experiences can be completely different from yours as you've come up as a PM through the years. So please share those things. It's perfectly reasonable for us to have different experiences, and I think that all of them are valid, equally valid, and I think they can all help to inform us on how to respond and react to our own PM challenges. So please, different perspectives are great. They're encouraged, and it's completely normal and appropriate for us to have different experiences, and I think we can all benefit from those collectively. I won't be answering any super personal questions. I'm happy to talk about the PM lifestyle and experience in general. But I also won't be discussing any real specifics about contracts that I've been a part of or specific agencies or customers or even companies that I've worked for. It's just best not to kind of go down those paths. So I'll be speaking in generalities about the program management space. So, and I'll also always reserve the right not to answer any specific questions just to keep things fun. We're trying to enjoy ourselves here. So if you do ask a question that isn't answered, I apologize, but just to keep things enjoyable and fun, there may not be specific ones that I'll touch on. So appreciate you being here and helping us get through this and and enjoying yourselves. All right, so let's go here first. So what is ChatGPT? All right, so many of you, if you were in my previous live stream, you already know, and if you've been in any of the tech space at all, you're completely aware of what ChatGPT is. It's a large language model that is kind of came out. It's about 2 months ago now. I think I remember messing around with it just before Christmas 2022. So it's trained to kind of respond human-like as almost a text-based output, like a chat bot, but so much more. And it can be used for all kinds of different tasks like language translation. It can answer a bunch of your questions. If you've ever been out there, you know that it can answer just about anything you could ever want it to answer. Whether that's correct or not is a whole other story, and I'll get to some of the challenges there. But it can be also used in a ton of different applications as chatbots, like I mentioned earlier, language translation, but you also see tons of options for content creation. But I wanted to mention something here. It's not only ChatGPT, but it's that capability of kind of a large language model, generative AI capability. So ChatGPT is the most well known right now, but there are dozens of companies that are working on various other options of ChatGPT, and that's something you really need to be aware of. Is ChatGPT is not like it's not like the Kleenex of the tissue environment where that name just becomes synonymous with all AI. It might do that, but there are tons and tons of other companies that are working on models or working off of OpenAI's platform and creating models. So you can literally get personalized chat, GPT powered models that you can utilize yourself. And that causes a whole host of interesting problems, which we'll get to. So remember, it's not just GPT. This is all over the place. As many of you've heard, even this week, Google has their own Lambda and Bard. You're going to hear many, many, many more companies coming out with the capabilities. It's the genie is out of the box, so to speak. So again, it's not just OpenAI. It's not just ChatGPT. It's this capability. So what are some of the concerns? I will mention this. This was mentioned the last time. There are an enormous number of discussions going around on this kind of generative AI capability, and particularly ChatGPT. There a lot of times in the answers that ChatGPT produces, there can be a lack of context. There's all kinds of discussions about bias. As if you have tried it at the beginning and tried it now, you'll also know that it has been kind of constrained. They've added a whole bunch of different constraints where it won't answer certain questions anymore. It was terrible, but this is the internet. People were asking it questions on how to build bombs and stuff like that, and it was actually generating step-by-step instructions on doing that. So they've locked down a lot of those pieces in ChatGPT. But remember, there is a company that's right down the road that has probably got a completely open model, ChatGPT, that's or this generative AI capability that is not going to be restrained. So the misinformation piece is super important. The ability for this generative AI to create all kinds of disinformation is a real thing. So please take it with a grain of salt. Take it with an understanding that the content that it spits out could be completely wrong. It is wildly confidently wrong in certain situations. And what I mean by that is it speaks as if it's authoritative and confident in the answer, and that answer can be completely incorrect. So again, there's a lot of stuff that's still evolving in the space, but you need to be aware of that. And then because the model is wildly complex, there are something like hundreds of billions of parameters that are used in the model. That a lot of times can't explain how it got to a particular result. And I'll say this too, it is essentially a monstrous text predictor. That's really what it's doing. It's literally taking billions of parameters and trying to figure out what letter and word is the most likely that should come in the next piece of the sentence. That's literally how it generates a lot of stuff. And certainly I don't purport to be any kind of AI expert, but there's a lot of black box elements there that we're really not sure as to how it gets to some of this stuff. So again, that plus the potential misuse down the line, just be aware of all this stuff as you're going into ChatGPT. This is the internet after all, and all the challenges and pain and suffering of the internet are going to be, mirrored in the world of ChatGPT. But again, I can't stress, it's here. And it is, in my opinion, going to be wildly transformative in a whole host of ways. We're going to talk about a couple of those. So the most recent piece of the puzzle that came up, many of you probably use Teams. And if you do, if you have any questions about it, post any thoughts in the chat. But also I'll mention too, I'm not an expert on Teams, but a lot of us use Microsoft Teams in the work environment. So I wanted to talk about this because it's got some really interesting features that are coming up that I think we want to at least be aware of. So the challenge of ChatGPT right now is that it's kind of a standalone thing, right? You gotta go over to ChatGPT, type in the thing, and then whatever it generates, you've got to take it out and put it into something else. That is going to be gone shortly. So not only has Microsoft invested an enormous amount of money, something like $10 billion into OpenAI, they're also integrating it into their Office suite. That is happening now. And Microsoft, the Teams Premium Edition, which is literally out now, is going to have that feature kicked in an incredibly short period of time. So it's coming. And that ability to integrate with these other capabilities, that's when things are going to go bonkers. Like, you're going to be in Microsoft Word, you're going to be able to interface with ChatGPT directly in Microsoft Word to generate content, have it formatted, do all, and that's when things just start to blow up. There's just no question that integrated capability is going to be a huge deal. So let's talk about Microsoft Teams. Okay, so I wanted to include this picture because this kind of just came out. And the first thing that I did when I heard it was there is, oh, well, let me go get it. This would be cool. I would love to have this and try it out. And so I went and got it on a personal account. I was like, okay, so I'll log in. And by the way, huge props to anybody that understands the Microsoft environment, the 365 environment, and how to set it up. Bless you, because it kind of reminds me that as a PM, a lot of times you are going to have folks on your team that are far, far, far more technically capable than you are. Be okay with that. But also be interested in technology, because I'm interested in trying to do this. I'm failing miserably a lot of times, but it's still fun. So I set up my own Microsoft Teams Premium, and I noticed really quickly that some of the features that I really wanted were not there. So one thing that was there was the ability to transcribe the meeting. And I'll go through an example of, I did a meeting with myself, and you'll see the content of it and see how it transcribed it. And then I'll put that into ChatGPT and we'll see what we get out of it. But the advantage to Microsoft Teams Premium with the AI element built in is this thing called Intelligent Recap. Now, what you can see in the bottom right is that it's not there yet. So these pieces do not show up in the current Teams environment, at least for me yet. But my understanding is they're really coming. And why we care about the Intelligent Recap is because it is able to take the transcript of the meeting and summarize it, and also potentially do things like suggest action items, and it can assign action items to people. Also, on the left-hand side over here, you can see that it actually, bottom left, where my cursor is, it actually shows who was talking at a particular time. Now, the way they get you on this, it's funny. Everybody that is on that call has to have Teams Premium to get that capability to show up. So, we'll see how that goes. Microsoft is going to get you to pay one way or another. But the advantage there is that it can actually assign both particular parts of the discussion to a speaker, and also assign action items to a particular person based on the content of the transcript. And ChatGPT can actually do this pretty well even now. So I'll show you how to do that. But the reason I wanted to show you Microsoft Teams is so many of us use it today if you're not using the transcript capability, I just highly recommend it. I really think you can pull that transcript out. I mean, some of these, I'm sure if you are a PM, you are like me, and we are in meetings constantly. 8 hours, 10 hours a day, it just never ends. There's always some kind of meeting that we have to go to. And a lot of times, in many cases, and you'll see this on the federal government side, there may be somebody that's just at the meeting to take notes and meeting minutes. And if we could just completely erase that, get the transcript of the meeting minutes and have AI essentially summarize the main points of the meeting, and all we have to do is really look at it and make sure they got it right, it's going to be wildly more productive. So keep that in mind. That's one of the reasons why I wanted to show you this Teams Premium, because I really do think it's going to be a game changer for many of us PMs as we kind of get our meetings under control, and it's going to do a lot of really cool things there. So I'll show you the Teams image in a little larger size. Let's do that. Okay. So as I mentioned before, on the right-hand side, these are suggestions that come directly from the transcript of the content, and it'll give you suggested notes. And this actually gives you timestamps as well as to when that person was speaking and what time it hit and all those things. It's absolutely bonkers, but very cool that the way they do that. Because that way, if you wanted to watch the main event, you could literally go and find that spot in the presentation and listen to it directly. I mean, it's a insanely cool feature that is available on this once they get this kind of up and running. And then the suggested tab is really cool, and I'll show you how to do this in ChatGPT today. But it also says, hey, these are action items that came from the meeting, and you can see them a little bit better here. It also identifies, obviously, all the speakers, things like that already happened today, but you can mention people, you can put the @ sign and comment to people, and you can, do the regular features in Teams. But that transcription piece, I really feel is huge. So we're going to talk about Bing search. So thank you, Steve, for commenting in the chat. So we're going to talk about Bing and Google. It's a big deal. So yep, it's going to be really interesting to talk about that. I've got a couple of slides, and actually that's going to be the next discussion point. So that being said, when Microsoft Teams Premium comes out, give it a shot. Interestingly, for a lot of us in the federal space, one thing you'll realize is that technology, how fast technology evolves in the public sector is radically different than the way it works in the federal space. And mostly that's because of security. So for example, you'll hear this word all the time, FedRAMP. That is a classification of security clearance on a particular product or technology. That is usually one of the bars that has to be cleared to be delivered and utilized in the government space, and that's really even in what we would call public trust agencies, which are not classified. You go up to classified and you get into a whole nother level of kind of cyber requirements and things like that these things have to meet. And you'll get a chance. I was actually learning this year about them. They're called IL levels. So if you're going into any kind of classified space, I'm sure you'll hear about those. And so a lot of these environments have to meet those security criteria. And I was talking with several of our IT folks today about, hey, when do you think we're going to see Premium come out in the FedRAMP space? And they had actually talked to Microsoft about it. So it's literally going to be, they've talked about they don't think it's going to hit this year. And they've already been in process of trying to get it cleared through FedRAMP. So it might hit before the end of the year, but it may take a little bit longer. So you get an idea of the difference between, hey, this really cool new technology just came out. I'd like to use it on my program. You may have to wait. You may have to, wait months and sometimes even years for it to clear those clearances. So it's really interesting to see the difference between the hot new product and how long it takes to get into government. But on your personal accounts, and if you are using the stuff offline, you can get Teams Premium and use it, and hopefully it'll be available in your corporate environment soon, and you'll be able to take advantage of all these pieces. Okay, so to Steve's question, are we going to Bing instead of Google? Right? This is the new question. So Microsoft demoed this today. And by the way, if you jumped on this and tried to go out there, you're going to be put on a waiting list. I already did it. And I imagine many of you have probably done it as well. They'll ask you to be on, hey, sign up for the waiting list and we'll let you know when it comes out. But the insane thing about Bing and Google was, Bing had a news conference and Google needed to have one, right about the same time. Microsoft's went pretty good. I liked the presentations that they had. Google's was kind of a disaster. Number one, they actually found like an error in a screenshot about the James Webb Telescope that was a response from their Google chatbot. That was bad. There was also a huge malfunction during a live demo, where they didn't have a phone to demo the device live. It was just bad, all bad. And it's kind of hysterical because people are talking about the valuation of Google actually, the Alphabet, the parent company, took a huge hit after this, one little error in a public, situation like this. So it really is being watched by a lot of people. So what I wanted to show you here, I've got a screenshot of what the new Bing might look like. And the really cool feature about this, and I didn't see this so much on the Google side, and this is where I think the differentiation is going to occur, is that in the Google demo of like Bard and things like that, it really looked like that Bard was a separate app, kind of like ChatGPT. And if you have used, and all of us use, Google search, right? How often have you used Google search and gotten the exact information that you needed by clicking the first option, that came up in the results? Number one, now they're flooded by ads and it's impossible to figure out where they are. Number two, what they actually find is people click into a response and then click back out because it's not the right thing. So Google search literally hasn't changed in like 20 years, and it drives all of us bonkers. It's one of the most painful things that you can possibly do. One of the reasons why I even mentioned this in the last video was I'm actually using ChatGPT more for basic questions that I need answered than Google, because it just takes too long to go through all that pointing and clicking. And so, in that situation, and Steve just tried to get the Bing situation, and they had the join waitlist to enter it. And so, yeah, they've got some examples that you can click on and it'll walk you through some of that stuff. So it's coming soon though. So yeah. So again, the example that Microsoft showed is really way more compelling. So what they've got here is a very similar thing like we've seen before, which is you ask the question in a box, and then it provides you Google-esque or web page based responses like, hey, and the question was, how do I pick the best dog breed for me? Is it better to adopt or buy? And you kind of put this whole prompt in, and then it spits out the search results from pages. But then the really cool part is on the far side where it says Bing picking right here, this B, that is an AI generated response. Okay. And what's insane about this is, one of the big challenges with ChatGPT was, well, how do I know where this came from? Like, how do I know where it's sourcing this information? Could be totally sketch, and I'm just reading it and expecting it to be, correct. Well, in this situation, you're going to start seeing these little numbers, and I know it's super small on the screen, but there's a number 2 here, and then there's a number 3 down here. And if you click see more underneath that, if you click see more underneath that, it will actually put the reference space underneath it numerically aligned like a bibliography. It'll tell you exactly where it got that content, and then you can click and verify the content, because that's going to be the next big thing is kind of fact checking the content that's coming through. That's something that ChatGPT doesn't do, and a lot of people were, number one, impressed by it, and number two, surprised that it actually showed up, because this gives you an opportunity to kind of get a ChatGPT-esque type answer, but you also then get kind of the comfort of knowing that, oh, here's where this stuff came from. Let me click on that and see if it makes sense and if it's not a crazy site that it picked up. So again, having those pieces both available to you, it just blows the Google search out of the water, right? So and thank you, Jennifer, for commenting. One of the things that Jennifer says in the chat is, Google search isn't great. It only shows those pay ads, right? And that's what we see more and more is, you see these things and they look like they're legit, and then you see this little ads thing and you're trying to sort through it and figure it out. I'm not saying that certainly Microsoft will have ads. They are going to figure out a way to monetize this. But that's why Google search is so frustrating today. I think, 20 years ago when it came into the scene, it was amazing. We were like, oh my gosh, this is incredible. I can find, a web page with the answer that I need. But then you had to click to that web page and find the answer in the web page. Now that's completely gone. That will not happen again. Now you can actually get a generative response with the information that you need and referencing web pages that might be attached to the search that you're asking for. It is an absolute game changer. So I do think, number one, that at least in this short term, and I can't stress this enough, Google has been working on AI for years, okay? And a lot of what ChatGPT is built on was foundational elements from Google's research. So I'm sure they, even with the disastrous, kind of kickoff that they had, they'll come back, with some great technology and capabilities. So this is only the beginning. The AI wars have begun, and it's starting with search, which I'm not surprised. So will we Bing or Google? We'll see. But I think what's interesting is that I know a lot of people that have signed up to join the waitlist for Bing. And if you had asked me 3 months ago if I would use Bing to search, that would be a joke, right? I mean, it would be like, of course not. Nobody Bings. That's kind of it's a meme, for goodness sakes. Nobody Bings. We Google stuff and we use Chrome. The only reason we use Bing is so that we can download Chrome. This is the situation that, Bing has been in. So the concept that it could transform and flip that quickly is just staggering. So we'll see how that goes. There are, I think like 100 million users on ChatGPT now. It's absolutely bonkers. But having that ability kind of packed into Bing might be something that could be a game changer. So we'll have to see how that goes. So anyway, wanted to share that piece with you because I think in the next, even in the next month or so, I think there's going to be kind of a lot of back and forth and a lot of dynamic change related to what's happening in the search space. Search is going to be one of the biggest things. And I will mention that Google is also doing this integration game. I said that Microsoft really was having the stuff go into Microsoft Office. That's a huge deal. But Google is also playing a little bit of a game where they're going to be integrating it into things like Google Translate. They'll also be integrating it into things like Google Maps eventually. So there's going to be AI elements built into the maps, like where they're doing things, and they're already doing this, by the way, where they do scene analysis and they can identify things in the scene and give you information about it. So yeah, it's going to be insane to see how that works. Yeah, Steve Jarrett says, I'd rather ask Chandler Bing. Absolutely. Chandler Bing would give us did you not get that? Did you not ask for it? All right. So next we're going to go back to some examples for us. So what I want to do here, let me go back here. So what I wanted to try, at least from Microsoft Teams perspective, was I thought, okay, if the transcription function isn't there, what happens if you take a transcript from Teams and then spit it into ChatGPT? And I thought that would be interesting to see kind of what it does and if it's got the capability today. So the hysterical part is I went ahead and I had a meeting with myself in Teams. If you could have seen it, it was hysterical. I was just talking to myself, but I made up a situation in Teams where I was having a meeting about deploying a brand new server farm. Okay, and this is, I just completely made it up because I'm not even involved in that kind of thing. But I wanted to roll out 200 servers to South Carolina, and I was talking to folks about what this was going to look like. And you can see that the content of the chat transcript isn't great. So I'm not sure if you're seeing this as easily as I can, but it's got timestamps. And by the way, these are editable. You can have them or remove them. But this will actually do some cool stuff from a transcription perspective where it will fix it. It will reorganize it and make it more readable. But you can see that, if there's pauses in your speech, that it kind of kicks in new timestamps and stuff like that. So it's relatively hard to read. So Jennifer says, am I having meetings with myself now? As if I didn't have enough, I've decided to meet with myself. You are rude, crude, and thoroughly unattractive. So anyway, sorry, that was an old school reference. But what I wanted to do is let's go ahead and take this transcript and spit it over into ChatGPT and see the kinds of things things that I can do. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and shift this to GPT. All right, and I'm going to copy the content of that chat. And what I'm going to do is in ChatGPT, I'm going to, and always remember to refresh. And luckily, I actually have this. I have this stored too if it doesn't work, because it does these kinds of things all the time. So I'm going to start a new chat, and I'm going to say, please summarize in bullet form and provide a list of action items. And then what I'm going to do is literally just paste in that transcript. So this is the transcript of the meeting with myself, okay? And so I just asked it to please summarize in bullet form and provide a list of action items, and we're going to go ahead and execute. Oh, and actually it's 100 servers. I think I changed it in some of my my examples. The project manager, by the way, is Steve, which is not surprising. So Steve, I know you're in the chat. So yeah, you've got a whole bunch of work ahead of you. But as you can see, so a couple things I wanted to show you about this. Number one, you've seen how fast this does this in real time. It's absolutely bonkers. And it even names it South Carolina Server Stand-Up Project, which I really love. So it summarizes all of these pieces and what needs to be done. It talks about who the project manager is. It actually talks about, I did put the number of engineers that would be involved and who's got some responsibility. And then the action item specifically lists out, Steve, create a project plan, do all these things. And then Anne is going to be responsible for the facility stuff. So she's basically responsible for, managing the lease information, dealing with the site, having to get it set up and ready for the move-in of the servers, et cetera, et cetera. So fantastic, right? It's amazing how, number one, quickly and how, well formatted this whole thing is. And it took seconds. So the advantage here is that you could literally copy and paste the action items and just put it in an email, and take the transcript from your meeting. And again, you can help the system by saying things like, okay, here are the action items, but I didn't even really do that. I just said, hey, Steve, we need you to do this. And Anne, we need you to do this. And it had absolutely no problem, running through and identifying who those people were and what the action items were that they needed to be responsible for. So, again, Steve, you're going to be expected to stand that puppy up pretty quickly. So, all right. So then the other piece that I wanted to show, and let's go back to our PowerPoint here. So a couple of things that you can do, and I'll go through our little list here. So I showed you our script. So you can summarize the meeting into bullets and action items like I did. And then it's like, well, wait a minute. What if, we had this meeting and it was, well, now we've got to provide a justification to senior management because we need to, we need to be able to get the money to pay for all this stuff. We were talking about this cool idea of getting all these extra servers. How do we, what if we wanted to write a justification for this? And so let's try a prompt like that. And we're going to keep it in the same, in the context of the same chat. And again, remember, this is a couple notes. Bing, that ChatGPT element on the right-hand side is contextual. So in other words, you can continue to ask it questions based on responses that you've asked it previously. So it is contextual. It keeps all that information going, as does ChatGPT. That's one of the big keys about this is it will remember the previous comments and questions, and then you can ask it to expand on certain things and continue going from there. All right, so we've got the information in there from the meeting, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to say, okay, I would like to ask it to write a justification, a purchase justification for this new server farm located in South Carolina with at least 5 bullets talking about why this is a good investment for the company, right? And let's see what it can provide us for that. So this would be something like if you were starting up and your engineers had come to you and said, hey, it's really important that we do this project then you have to be able to offer this information up to your management chain. You can ask it to just generate, essentially a letter or an email. You can literally copy and paste this in. But let's take a look if it got some of the pieces right. Okay, so it's the first one it came up with is scaling and capacity, which is pretty good, and it talks about how the company will have the ability to expand its operations. So pretty good. Improved reliability. You get high quality servers and ensure that the stuff is delivered with reliability and performance. These are all good. Cost savings, always beneficial. Enhanced data security and future proofing. So these 5 bullets, you could literally, and again, you'd have to edit them. You got to read through them. You got to make sure that they're correct, and they won't be directly applicable to, like, let's say your company. Now, I will say this, not that far down the line, you could bring a ChatGPT or OpenAI instance into your own environment, and you could train it on your own stuff. So it literally could give a tailored response potentially about information specifically related to your company. That's going to happen, is like you're going to have these models that are available and are trained only on your environment or your environment plus the internet, that kind of stuff. And you'll get some really, targeted results that are even going to be better than this. But again, this is absolutely usable to take into a new email and just put some additional information in it and talk about it. So absolutely incredible the way that works. So let's do the milestones and Gantt charts. That's the next piece. And I had not gone back to ChatGPT. Let's do that. There we go. Okay. So this was the prompt that I mentioned before, which was, hey, please write a justification. And this was what I was talking about. Sorry, right here. Write a justification for the 100 servers, and then this was the response that it gave. Sorry, I didn't realize I'd not clicked back. I'm getting wild with all these different views, right? Okay, so going back to our PowerPoint, so let's see the roadmap, right? Like Steve was saying in the chat, like, this sounds pretty cool. Can it actually do something like that? So, all right, so what if we say, let's create a roadmap for deploying these 100 servers in the next 2 months with a milestone date or start date of February 1st. So let's go back to our ChatGPT and let's put this prompt in. All right. So now basically, again, like what I'm trying to do is show here ways that you can use it in your regular work as a program manager, which is like, I need to write a justification. I can do that. I just had a meeting with, the team about kicking this thing off. I can bring a transcript over and I can kick out action items. And then now it's like, well, the purchase request has been approved. And now they want to see, well, how are you going to do this? What are the milestones? So we'll kick that back in and we'll see what it generates. So what's interesting about the whole concept here is that you can put all kinds of dates in and it'll do some amazing stuff. Like you can ask it to, specifically give certain sections. So let me just back up. My prompts are wildly simplistic. There are people out there right now, that are essentially prompt engineers. It is a new job. It is going to be a thing for years to come, where they have these massively complex prompts and they're able to get incredible things out of ChatGPT right now. On the previous one, I mentioned things like that it can generate code. You can ask it to generate certain kinds of codes and certain kinds of configuration files and things like that. It's able to do all of those things. So my prompts are wildly simplistic, but it can still do some really cool stuff. I mean, we don't need to be prompt engineers to get value out of this. So I said, okay, let's take a look at the roadmap and look at this. Like, not only does it tell you what the phases are, it gives you a date range. And again, it's all editable, but at least it gives you a framework. The biggest key is that for most of us, the number one challenge to generating content is the blank page. That is, and you ask any writer, that gets writer's block, just having the blank page in front of you is the biggest challenge. It's the hardest thing to start. If you have this and just plunk it down in front of you and you say, well, yeah, I think preparation is going to actually take us, an extra 2 weeks, fine. but it's already got the structure right there for you to enter the stuff in. And it even goes through things like infrastructure setup. Like, look at that. Make sure you're receiving and unboxing all the hardware. Install the racks and cooling infrastructure. So again, it's taking information that is fairly technically complex and can, expand on it. Now, what you can do, so let me go back and just show you. It's got operating system, application deployment. It's got a go live. That's generally what we call it when we have a project that is moving into the production environment. And it also tells you, hey, this is high level and it might need to be adjusted. But what if we said, well, wait a minute, like what is this infrastructure setup? Then I can just type in here, expand number 2. Okay, that's all, the only prompt I'm typing. And basically what it can do is it's taking the second bullet and it's saying, it's giving you much more detail around that one specific request. Whereas it was a summary before, it's now going into significantly more detail, like, hey, identify the hardware components and all of these pieces. It even gives you some of the hardware components. And you can, again, continue to expand and expand. Which is one of the amazing things about it is that ability to contextually remember that, hey, we talked about this and yeah, let's expand on that one. And it includes, more detailed milestones around all those pieces. And I like this one because it's got quotes and negotiating pricing and things like that. So this is an expansion of just one of those bullet points that you can kind of go through. Now, the last one that Steve had asked about in the chat is this Gantt chart. Because I actually think in my last video, I was like, yeah, well, we can't really do a Gantt chart yet. But they, like I mentioned then, they are going to have interpretive software elements that are going to be able to turn any kind of output into a beautiful Gantt chart. But I have to show you what ChatGPT does with this. So, all right, all you have to do for the prompt in this one is say, I want a Gantt chart. Can you give me a Gantt chart for the roadmap? We'll see what it does. Okay, so this is funny because it gives you this expanded view of the milestones, right? So it's kind of interesting that it's like, well, I can't really do drawings. So I'm going to go ahead and, I'm going to give you the best I can with the output. Now, I will say this, so I will show you something else right after it's finished here. So in this instance, it knows that it's text-based. Okay. In a previous question that I asked it earlier, let's go to my roadmap for a server, for deploying a server earlier. And let's see what I had here. So I basically did the same thing earlier, but I did 200 servers, and I was trying to test out how this would work as I went down through it. Now here, I said, create a Gantt chart for this roadmap. Now look at this response. A Gantt chart is a graphical representation and it has start and end dates. Here is a sample Gantt chart for the roadmap I provided. So this is why you've got to be super careful about what it spits out. Now again, it's not great, it's terrible, it doesn't look like, a normal cool Gantt chart that you get out of Visio or something like that. But it did the best it could and generated, graphics. Now, just remember that this is going to be able to integrate with something like DALL-E 2, and it's going to have the ability eventually for you to just click on Gantt chart and it'll know exactly how to take the data and spit it into this thing. But you see the difference that it makes depending upon asking the same prompt in 2 different scenarios. One time it says, I'm just text-based, I can't do it. In another, it'll spit out the drawing of a Gantt chart. This becomes really interesting and critical when it gets down to things like software code, because I've watched multiple people on YouTube that are software experts, and they will show you that the code that it generates can be completely different time after time, because again, it is literally just predicting what the next chunk of text should be as it's spitting this thing out. And in this case, it was able to take into account a graphical representation of a Gantt chart and try to replicate it in here, which is absolutely mind-boggling when you think about it. So, that roadmap includes info and content that was not from the transcript. So Steve mentioned that the roadmap that was generated earlier, and let's go back to that because this is actually a really good point. So this can include, so this is the transcript. We're going back through the other chat that we did. it's got the transcript, and then we asked it to do a roadmap, right? It understands what's happening with the project. This was the meeting summary with the action items. And then we got the purchase justification there, and then we said the roadmap. Now it takes information from the previous transcript. So it knows that there's 100 servers involved. And I told it that we needed it in the next 2 months. But like Steve says, it went out and then gathered additional information about what a roadmap would involve. And it also got a roadmap for an IT deployment of servers. So again, I mean, it was amazing the way that it's able to pull this information in. And so Jennifer asked a related question, like, well, is it cumulative? Like, does it remember all of the information from your meetings? So one thing I want to mention, and this is a little sidebar, but yeah, and eventually Steve says in the chat, we'll be able to paste that text into an Office app. Absolutely. I mean, and it'll probably, like, Visio will have a ChatGPT or OpenAI powered box right there. And you'll just tell it, hey, here's a bunch of information. It can take unstructured data and do this. So it doesn't have to be structured. Like you saw the garbage transcript that I gave it, and it still pulled out incredibly good comments. But I want to get back to Jennifer's question, which is, does it remember all your meetings? So a couple things about ChatGPT. One is it is the way they're going to bill it, I think I mentioned last time, is on this, like, it's called a token-based system, where a token might be a part of a word, and it's how many of those parts are involved. And like I told you before, all it is a text predictor. So it predicts the next character or part of a word, and those things are considered tokens in the world of OpenAI. So you get billed for those kinds of things. So interestingly, the constraints that I told you that they're putting on a lot of that they put on ChatGPT since it started, one of those is how much stuff you can dump into it and ask it to summarize. So very early on when it first came out, I was really interested in, okay, can it summarize like an RFP or something? And I actually showed in one of the previous videos, yeah, it can do it. But I actually had much larger RFPs, pages and pages, and I just pasted the whole thing in there, and it had no problem with it. It churned through it and spit out a summary. But then I tried to do that same piece, probably in the last week or so, and it said it's just too much. You're asking, you got too much information pasted in there. So there's some sort of limit and constraint that they put on it. But that being said, within ChatGPT, you don't have to, if you go to OpenAI, you don't have to go to ChatGPT. You can go to something called their playground. They call it the playground, and you can actually pay for utilization of the playground. And there it takes all the gloves off. Now it's not super cheap or really super expensive. Like, for just goofing around, the kind of stuff that we would do, like if we really wanted to dump in an entire RFP and have it summarize it. I think for that kind of stuff, if you do it a couple times a month, it's maybe $20-30. So it's not insanely expensive. But in the playground, you have this ability to post a lot more information. Now, what's really cool is I did hear, so kind of Jennifer's question, which is really interesting, is, can it remember all your meetings? Like, what if you had a whole bunch of chats and conversations? Could it go back through all of them? And so right now, it's just contextual in the one chat. And then you'll see in like Bing, it has like almost a sweeper icon. So it's like sweeping that discussion away. But there are discussions about, well, eventually you're going to be able to link all those chats together, and it's essentially going to create a knowledge base of all of your meetings, and all of that stuff will be available and ready to go. So right now it's only contextual within the current chat that you're in, but that's definitely coming. And as I mentioned, in the playground, if you go to the OpenAI playground, you could keep a chat going forever. I say forever, but I've had chats that went on for an hour in that playground, and it didn't exceed any kind of limit. So it's able to spit out stuff for days. So the advantage of all this, like I said before, is two things. Number one, I'm super glad that it gave us two different responses, because this really gives you an idea where you understand that sometimes the constraints are added, sometimes they're not. Sometimes it thinks it's a text-based language model, sometimes it doesn't. It's kind of crazy the way that whole process works. So it's interesting to see In this particular response, it just does a more detailed milestone and roadmap, which of course you could then dump into, something like Visio for a Gantt chart or Microsoft Project and be able to do it. But it certainly did a Gantt chart before. It wasn't pretty, but it was able to do it. So the main reason that I wanted to go through this tonight with everybody was, there are every day this thing is changing and expanding. And I think from our perspective as, project and program managers, we have to be aware that this is out there. The implications to a lot of the jobs that we manage and support could be significant. So for example, I mentioned this before, voice synthesis is almost there. In the last, one of my last videos, I talked about VAL-E, VALL-E, which is a voice synthesis capability, and literally with about 3 seconds of speech, it can generate something that's pretty darn close to exactly what you sound like, with inflection and all kinds of other stuff. I mean, all of us have heard the horrible voice, robotic voice, text-to-voice stuff that we've heard in the past. They're on the precipice of that just going out the window and almost being able to do very human-like responses. There was even a video on YouTube, literally from a couple of years ago, where they had a person call in and they couldn't tell that it was it was an AI that they were speaking to. It was really interesting to hear the back and forth, and they weren't aware that it was an AI at all. So whether that's happening today at some companies, who knows? But it's absolutely coming. So that in the future, when you're dialing into a call center, you're not going to have to go through the prompt trees that you had to, like press 1 for this or press 2 for that. You just say, what are you calling about? And you actually tell it. And it's not like it is today where it's like, did you say that you're calling about cockroaches? And I'm like, no, I'm talking, this is a CVS. I'm not talking about cockroaches. So yeah, it's terrible today, but it's not going to be like that in the future, because the voice synthesis, number one, is really good. The speech to text that it uses is actually remarkable, because I'll tell you this, the transcript that I did earlier was kind of this kind of speech. I was just running through it, and it didn't miss a beat. It got almost everything correct. And so it's getting better and better and better. So that's a limit that is artificial right now. That is going to go away. So you can imagine a future where, anything where you have to interface with a call center capability or something is going to be completely different. And the advantage there is, and again, I know a lot of people are worried about, what's going to happen to all the call center jobs. I think the advantage here is that then you could use your agents to do the more complex tasks up the scale, which, number one, allows them to be, trained and get additional skills. It allows for more value for the company and the customer. So it doesn't necessarily go away. It's like what we would call like tier 0 and tier 1 interfaces, where it can get some of this stuff and do first call resolution, where it answers the problem right there on the phone, which gets a lot of the basic stuff out of the way. Like, for call centers today, how many of them are, if you're in a corporation, how many of them are reset my password? It's huge numbers. So if you get rid of that stuff, then your, technicians and capabilities could focus on the ones that really matter and get the information that they really need. So all of that's coming. So again, this is the main reason why we as project and program managers, number one, need to be aware of it. Use the technology. It's coming. And also, like I mentioned, the reason I wanted to go through this process today was that it really shows a start to finish situation where you can kind of use ChatGPT in any mechanism throughout that process. And again, it's not doing your work for you, but it's giving you a template that you can then expand on, which is a huge advantage, because that's going to be the game changer. It spits out a lot of stuff that then you just have to edit, and you'll be in good shape and ready to go. So that's basically it for this session. So keep an eye on ChatGPT. It is changing daily. We are going to see huge changes in the next, I would even say, month, when Google starts to bring out a lot of their pieces. Keep an eye on other companies that are out there. Also keep an eye on your social media feed, because a lot of the content that's being generated now is just being generated through OpenAI and spit out to social media. I'll even mention that, we've heard about deepfakes. That's a huge problem. Not only photo deepfakes, but now they've got full video deepfakes, and they're incredibly difficult to understand or compare to the real world and be able to figure out that it's not the real person, on the screen. So deepfakes are a huge problem, but also the ability for these systems to generate video from a prompt and generate music from a prompt. There are some incredible, Google has a music AI where you can actually type in, I want to hear Beethoven whistled by someone, an example of what Beethoven would do if it was whistled by a person. And it literally spit out a guy whistling, and it sounded like a piece that Beethoven might have written. It wasn't a whistle to Beethoven. It literally created a example that was similar to Beethoven, and it had somebody whistling it. It was the Andy Griffith theme tune, but just Beethoven. It was pretty incredible the way that whole process worked. So again, they're going to integrate it with all these different pieces. So not just video, not just voice, not just images and things like music. All of that stuff can be generated now through prompts, which is going to make the biggest difference in the world. So again, keep your eyes and ears open. It's going to be fun. Steve's been added to the Bing wait list. Go out there, get yourself waitlisted. We'll be back next week, Thursday night at 7. Again, if you enjoyed this, if it was helpful, please consider liking. If you didn't like it, dislike it. If you'd like to comment and talk about your experiences with ChatGPT and ways that you think that it could benefit a project or program manager, we'd love to hear from you, and I'd love to have this kind of shared feedback. Also, as I mentioned before, these live streams will be cut down and they'll be available also on the Fed PM Pro channel as regular videos. So feel free to come by and visit anytime, and we will look forward to seeing you next week. Well, I'm sure ChatGPT will come up again. So thanks everyone for stopping by, and we will see you in the next one. Thank you.